Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But first, as you know, if you're a regular Justice viewer, I do an opening statement at this time every Saturday. And more often than not, it's about whatever's gotten me fired up that week. And this week, I am fired up. I am angry. But I'm even more confused. Confused as to why Congressman Trey Gowdy of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, one of the few people in Washington who has the intelligence, the expertise, and the ability to see through the nonsense, if not illegality, going on at the FBI and the Department of Justice, Trey Gowdy would say this about a spy placed in the Trump campaign.
I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
So why was I stunned? And why was I upset with that answer? Number one, Trey Gowdy knows he's not supposed to confirm or deny Spygate. Number two, saying that the placing of a spy or a confidential human source, as the big shots call it, in the Trump campaign has nothing to do with Donald Trump is ridiculous. But instead of me taking on Trey Gowdy tonight in an opening statement, which I fully intended to do, I instead decided to get some insight into what may be his thinking from some of his closest colleagues. So joining me now, Congressman Jim Jordan, Chairman Mark Meadows, and Congressman Ron DeSantis, all member of the Freedom Caucus and unrelenting voices in the fight for truth in this Russia probe, all on the the House Oversight and Reform Committee. Now, I'm going to start with you, Mark Meadows. Under no circumstances would anyone even think of placing a spy, or as they want to call it, a confidential human source, someone who clearly has foreign intelligence capabilities in the campaign of a man running for president of the United States. It has never happened in the history of this country, but these guys did it. So why shouldn't I be furious? And who do they think they're kidding?
Well, Judge, you should be furious, and I can tell you that as we look at the evidence, and Jim and I and Ron have read thousands of pages as we look at this, you should be furious because whether it's spying on the Trump campaign or the Bernie Sanders campaign or any presidential campaign, it's wrong. And what we do have is a growing body of evidence that would suggest just the opposite of what my good friend Trey Gowdy said, is indeed the FBI and DOJ did do things improperly. We know that indeed that there was informants within the Trump campaign prior to the FBI opening an investigation. So we've got to make sure that we get to the bottom of it. Yeah,
and that point is a very important one, and I want my viewers to understand that the timeline here is extremely significant. Now, that bozo Clapper made a statement on The View, and I think we may have it, and I'm going to ask Jim Jordan to take a listen to it.
Was the FBI spying on Trump's campaign?
No, they were not. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing, trying to understand, were the Russians infiltrating, trying to gain access, trying to gain leverage and influence.
So why doesn't he like
what they do?
So why doesn't he like that? He should be happy that.
Well, he should be.
Okay, so Jim Jordan, I think you know where I'm going with this. Since when do we put spies in a presidential campaign to find out what the Russians are doing? Why not intercept them on the way in unless you're trying to infiltrate the president's campaign?
And more importantly, Judge, why not tell the Trump campaign? Why not tell the candidate himself? Why not tell the guy who's now president of the United States, hey, we think Russians are trying to infiltrate your campaign, work with people on the periphery. Why not give them a briefing, a defensive briefing? That didn't take place. So that to me is the fundamental reason. And to say he doesn't like the term spy, what else can you call it? It wasn't an informant. It wasn't inside. It was someone from the outside contacting people associated with the Trump campaign to try to get information. If that's not a spy, I don't know what is.
Well, you know what's interesting, Jim, is that I think it was Comey who said, it's not spy, a confidential source. But then he never answers it. He just says there's a difference.
Yeah, Judge, and the FBI and the DOJ want us to say, oh, you can trust us now. We're giving you a briefing. They gave these guys a briefing last week, didn't show them any information, to my understanding.
Well, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going.
But think about this. We have caught them hiding information from us in the past. Mm-hmm. They hid the fact that Peter Strzok and Judge Contreras were friends. The same, a FISA court Judge Contreras, the same judge who heard Flynn's case. They tried to hide that from us, redacted that information when they gave us some of the Strzok page text messages. So now they tell us, don't worry, even though you caught us hiding information from us, don't worry, you can trust us now.
But you know what's interesting, Congressman Jordan, is the fact that then Contreras is recused from the case, so clearly there was wrongdoing there, like within a week. But I want to go to Congressman DeSantis. Trey Gowdy makes this statement, which unfortunately reminds me of Clapper's statement, basically saying, I'm going to rely on Rod Rosenstein from the Department of Justice, who's put Mueller in there after Mueller was taken to be head of the FBI, and Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI. All right. He then says, I don't believe any of this was a problem, and my fellow Americans would want this to happen. The guy is too smart, Ron. He is too sophisticated. He is a prosecutor. He's, in fact, one of my heroes. I got to tell you that. I always loved Trey Gowdy, but I don't know if he went to the dark side or what's going on here. So why would Trey Gowdy, who understands credibility, understands lying, understands a courtroom, talk to Christopher Wray, Rod Rosenstein, and say, I haven't seen the documents, but hey, I believe everything they're saying? That's hogwash.
It is Monday, the 4th of June of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. That's right, folks. It's been a busy weekend, and we wake up to find that Trump is not. He isn't. People just don't know how to quantify this properly. Trump is not ascribing the powers to himself of a demigod. No demigod. He's not trying to be a demigod. Trump is ascribing the powers that actually God himself or herself would have. So just so you know, all right. He's not only God on earth, he's God. And you better believe it, because he does. Yeah, what 25th Amendment scenario would that bring up? I was just wondering. Okay, well, that was Jeanine Pirro at the top there, taking Trey Gowdy to task for, I don't know, siding with the rule of law? What the hell? And these Tea Party panelists that she had on. Sort of makes a lot more sense now, because I'm curious, how many rubles have gone through their campaigns, and how many rubles have gone through their various PACs. I'm just curious. I think maybe Mueller knows. And that's why there's such a full-on assault on what we've all known affectionately here in America up to this time as the rule of law. Huh. Yeah, Trump they're talking about shooting the former FBI director and getting away with it. Well, we have another world leader that we'll talk about today in today's show, who actually does that now, and Trump likes him. They drink together, and Trump doesn't drink, but they do. That's how much he likes him. Impressively. What else? Trump had a meltdown when he talked to or spoke with Macron the other day. They were talking about the steel tariffs and how that will affect Europe. And apparently Trump had a massive meltdown to the point of, a few invectives thrown while on the call with Macron. And I got to tell you, no one knows how to swear like the French. Mad. Just saying. Because Trump cannot take criticism, and apparently Macron talked to him man-to-man, and Trump doesn't like being talked to man-to-man because, well, he is God. He believes it. Why don't you? Yes, indeed. North Korea has replaced its top 3 military officials because having the top spy in the Oval Office wasn't quite enough. And apparently the U.S. First Lady, I think her name is Melania Trump, or maybe they call her Melanie now. She's going to skip the G7 and the North Korea summit. Some people think there's trouble at home. Well, there may be. I guess she's going to show up sometime. Is that today? Or she's ostensibly to make an appearance at the White House, but of course the press is not invited. In fact, the press is not only not invited, they're going to be roughly, evacuated from the area. Jim Acosta the other day, with his press credentials, and he's been covering the White House for 5 years, went to go into the presser the other day, and they didn't recognize him. Because, everybody with a Latin name looks alike. They do. I mean, just look at them. Okay. Well, we could go on and on because there's just so much, but we've had to put a cap on what we will report on because, well, that's what we have to do. That's why we curate. Okay? We can't just throw out a smorgasbord out there and say, have at it. We could, but we like to have it a little bit more refined. Yeah. So we will. So what's on the rest of the menu? Well, as we start off in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays, we'll continue on with a Florida GOP congressman hopes voters will like his women's summit on gardening, weight loss, and carpet stain removal tips. Yeah. I think this guy's, on Mother's Day and birthdays has probably given, a few, maybe he thought that the height of a loving gift to his betrothed was a washing machine and a dryer. Make it easier on her. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that idea of how to treat your betrothed went out in the 50s, but apparently not. Trump may have violated federal law by urging NFL owners not to sign Kaepernick. Well, what does he care? He wants to shoot Comey. Jeez. And Ryan Zinke defends sending park rangers to the Mexican border by citing the obvious environmental disaster caused by immigration. I would call that racism, but you can't do that. You have to find some, euphemism for it. But I won't. That's racist, Zinke. After the break, we'll move to the chef's table, where a new report details Scott Pruitt's cozy relationship with billionaire coal baron Joe Kraft. Yeah, Joe Kraft. Never heard of him? We will. And Philippines President Duterte tells the special UN rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers to go to hell after criticism over the removal of a Supreme Court justice who voted against Duterte's controversial government proposals. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You'll notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link. Our roaring girl, Kelly Lincoln, monitors that, and oftentimes in real time. So you might engage her in real time. That's a possibility. And you'll certainly engage other people, and they may be able to answer your questions. And if not, after you go take a gander to the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll notice there are the contribute and donate buttons. And thank you for your generosity. We are unable to do this without you, truly. And your generosity keeps the lights blinking in their proper order. And apparently everybody likes it. The bills are paid because that's what we do on the left. We pay our bills. So if you want to get other questions and need answered and you need to contact us in any way possible, do follow us on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of that. And you can go to Facebook, and I guess I'm supposed to take care of that. I put things on occasionally, but there you go. And follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and that's Putnam. And I'm also on Daily Kos as Justice Putnam, and that's where I publish a diary which includes the show notes and links for each of the shows that we do this week and every week, and that posts about 10 minutes before showtime. So check that out. And podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy can be had by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Okay, let's what a weekend, huh? And we are now in graduation season. My grandson is graduating from high school. My God, I'm that old. Yes, I am indeed. And so on Friday after the show, I will hightail it out of here and head north, because I'm in Southern Oregon, and he's all the way up pretty much in the state capital. So that's about a 3.5 hour drive or so, maybe less, maybe more. And so Friday night graduation, and that ought to be fun. And then in a couple of weeks, or actually less, in about 10 days, then he jets off to Germany for the bulk of the summer. And in somewhat of not an exchange program, but these are programs in which I guess kids from the German club get to go to Germany. Yeah, well, that's grand. Good for him. I will say that I took German in high school. I don't know if he said, "Oh, well, Grandpa took German in high school, I'm going to also." I don't know if that's the case, but I did take German in high school, and I often wish, in retrospect, that I had taken French, because by the time I did actually hone in on French, the neurons were firing in a different way. I wasn't a sponge for knowledge, or just soaked it in. It took effort. So yeah, I should have taken French, because in many respects, and this is no slam against Germans in the German language, and I know people may disagree, but German's kind of considerably easier than French was. And that may have been because my neurons weren't firing in the proper order. Darn. So much for plasticity of the brain, huh? Well, maybe it still is. Okay, let's get... I don't know where I'm going with that. And let's not go there. Let's look at this women's summit that a GOPer thinks would Oh, yeah. Yeah. When you go to Think Progress, Alan Pike penned this. They have a photo of Gus Bilirakis, Republican of Florida. And, yeah, he's definitely the type that would get the modern green scrubbies. So it makes it easier for his wife to scrub the pots and pans. Because you got to scrub them before you put them in the dishwasher, hun. Even now with our new fangled, really, like, you don't have to scrub your pots and pans before you put them in the dishwasher. You still do, and here's a special scrubby for it, too. Okay. Well, people in Florida's 12th Congressional District may not have a representative who supports the Violence Against Women's Act, but at least he's keen to talk to them about a women's guide to financial planning. Thank you. Like, women don't know how to balance the checkbook for the whole family. That's one of the several topics Representative Gus Bilirakis, Republican of Florida, has invited voters to discuss with him on June 9th at a women's summit planned by his campaign. A women's summit. Oh, my God. This is like home economics, but we'll call it a women's summit. Others include maintaining a healthy weight and promoting wellness. Oh, my God. They're going there. And community gardening. Oh, cool. You know, no one does Tupperware parties anymore. But a community garden, we can do that. That'll keep our minds off of the important things that the men folk should take care of. Okay, so he has apparently not sought renewed input from his women constituents in the 4 years since Bilirakis told the Tampa Bay Times that his ideas were generated by attendees of a women's stakeholder session he hosted in the town of Lutz in 2014. And the Women's Summit that Bilirakis is proposing, the agenda does not include a discussion of the Violence Against Women's Act, which Bilirakis opposed in a reauthorization vote in 2013, or the gender pay gap, which he sought to keep wide when he voted against the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Act in 2009. And Bilirakis' 2011 vote to permanently defund Planned Parenthood might conceivably fit into the parameters of the breakout discussion of community health care resources at the oft-smeared reproductive and sexual health services nonprofit is the single largest provider of the health care services to the women in the United States. I think it's Arkansas essentially said no more morning after pills for you, you little witch. And now there's no medication abortions at all in that state. I believe it's Arkansas. You can't have an abortion after 13 seconds. And if you get one before 13 seconds, you can't have that either. Ha ha ha. So much for your constitutional rights. Gibbs of Think Progress wrote this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. And now Trump may have violated federal law by urging NFL owners not to sign Kaepernick. He told them that this would be one that lifts him. With the midterms coming up and he has to rile up his base, and the way to do that is with racial animus. And if they sign Kaepernick, no matter how great of an athlete he is, that's just not good. So I have to say this story probably pales in comparison to shooting Comey. But this is an actual act that can be followed. And so when the Wall Street Journal last month confirmed what most have long suspected, that Donald Trump's public outrage about NFL players protesting police brutality and systemic racism at football games heavily influenced NFL owners to change the rule and discourage them from signing players who would protest. He's going after individual private U.S. citizens because he doesn't like their politics. Or their politics is such that he can use them as poster children to rile up his racist base. Well, Lindsey Gibbs says it's terrible news for those in favor of free speech and peaceful protest, and for those against white nationalism and police brutality. However, Mark Garagos, the lawyer representing Kaepernick in his collusion lawsuit against the NFL, sees the glass as being half full. He believes that both the anthem rule change and the information about Trump's influence on NFL owners will go a long ways toward him helping him prove that the NFL and NFL owners colluded to keep Kaepernick out of the NFL, despite the fact that he had the talent to be a starting quarterback in the league. Still does. He also believes that, this Garagos believes that Trump's direct influence over NFL owners on this issue violates federal law. But we all know now that God is above federal law. Hasn't he always been? And now God is in the Oval Office. Well, God's everywhere, but personified in the Oval Office. Well, actually, this U.S. Code 227 says that members of Congress or the executive branch cannot wrongfully influence a private entity's employment decision solely on the basis of partisan political affiliation. A few revelations from the last couple of weeks strongly support Garagos' case here. And it's important to remember that Garagos knows much more about the case than we do. He has taken the depositions of more than a dozen NFL owners, while the public only knows about the depositions that have leaked. Okay, and then Trump's comments were made at a political rally supporting an Alabama Republican candidate for U.S. Senate and an expressly partisan environment. And according to the Wall Street Journal, Trump told Jerry Jones, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, in private conversations that the issue was a winning one for him. Yes, indeed. Well, if that's not enough, after the NFL changed its anthem policy, media outlets such as CNN framed it as a victory for Trump. And it just so happened that Vice President Mike Pence agreed. He did. Of course, the NFL's official stance has always been that it's up to each individual team who they sign and don't sign, but it's just a coincidence that the ones who have taken a knee are not being signed. Sorry. We have other cogs in the machine. You have such a short window anyway. You're just going to get hurt. We saved you a major injury that you'd have to take with you for the rest of your life. Last offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article by Josh Israel, also out of Think Progress. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke believes that illegal immigration has made the U.S.-Mexican border an obvious environmental disaster. But unlike other environmental disasters, he thinks this one justifies his employees' time. In a interview on Fox Business Network, FBN, and then first reported on by The Hill, Zinke attempted to justify sending National Park Service and U.S. Park Police to enforce immigration laws based on environmental reasons and to defend the need for Trump's wall. This is garbage. There's needles. There's habitat destruction. It's unfettered, and we need to shut the border down for a number of reasons. But environmentally, he explained. Taken aback by the argument, and an incredulous host, Stuart Varney, asked, "You mean you want to build a wall because the immigrants are putting litter all over the place?" And Zinke affirmed, yeah, he does. I'm in charge of federal lands. I'll be the steward of our federal lands. Noting that 40% of the southern border is under his department's control, he smiled and said, the leftists, they have no policy arguments. They're just emotional about it. I'm not emotional. I'm practical. I'm a former SEAL Team 6 commander. I look at it. The president says do it. I look at the resources I have available and let's get it done. It's as simple as that. So that's why he puts out all of those weird flags to say what he's doing. He, literally, when he's at the Interior Department, he puts up some sort of weird flag, like semaphore, to denote that he's in town. And if he's out of town, there's a flag that flies. And if he's overseas, there's a flag that flies. A specific flag that denotes that. So he got it because he's a SEAL 6 SEAL 6 commander. Oh, wow. So that's why he has the brain that he does. He's practical. He's not humane. He's practical. Yeah, well, racism has a practicality to it, and so does fascism. As the Trump administration proposed draconian cuts to his department, including an 80% reduction in money for climate efforts, Zinke has supported his boss, embracing the cuts, saying there's no such thing as clean energy, praising withdrawal from the badly negotiated Paris Climate Agreement, and claiming that there are no models that exist to determine what climate change will be. Well, that's cherry picking. That's confirmation bias. Or maybe it's just strategic, because this is what fascists do. Ah, yes, I use the F word. This early in the morning, too, on a Monday. I apologize. Not. Let's get to our break. And then we'll come back. And, of course, we will go through weather from around the world, because there's a whole world out there that is really a lot bigger than the United States of America. And then we'll finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, the Marvelverse Comedy Club. Things can't be going much better at your studio than when the characters and legends from your quote-unquote serious movies can coalesce into a self-sustaining parody series. We've known Deadpool 2 is coming for a while. We already know a third has been confirmed. Wade Wilson, a.k.a. Deadpool, is the mutant hero who can't die. In the opening sequence here, his girlfriend is murdered by a villain he's been chasing, prompting him to attempt suicide, which, of course, is impossible. Recovering at the X-Mansion, he becomes a member of the X-Men, or as we're frequently reminded, an X-Men trainee. When the team responds to an incident at a youth facility for young mutants, we get to meet Fire Fist, upon whom the plot revolves. It seems that Fire Fist is destined to be a violent killer, triggering Cable, a Looper-esque time-traveling lawman, to arrive on the scene to take preventative action. Deadpool, true to his action hero ethos, wants to save the boy, and the R-rated over-the-top action is on, with Ryan Reynolds' character wisecracking throughout, to the point you'll be catching fresh witticisms even on a third viewing. The topics for his humor range from movie, Marvel and otherwise references, to general cultural quips and junior high sex jokes. Jared Kushner does not emerge unscathed, neither does new director David Leitch, who replaces Tim Miller from the first one and is referred to in a gag run of the credits as, quote, the guy who killed John Wick's dog, alluding to his co-direction of that picture. This is Reynolds' show to be sure, with Brolin as Cable, young New Zealander Julian Dennison as Fire Fist, and especially Zazie Beetz as the new Master of Luck superhero Domino come together to make Deadpool a total hoot. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. If I buy you lunch today, chances are you'll pick up the tab next time. We humans reciprocate a lot, days, weeks, or even months later. And other primates do it too. Monkeys that are more generous with food, for example, enjoy more grooming from their peers, and they're more likely to get backup later on in a fight. Now a new study suggests a non-primate, the dwarf mongoose, also makes cooperative, time-delayed barters, trading grooming for guard duty. Here's how it works.
When an individual is on sentinel, they are basically on guard duty for the rest of the group.
Julie Kern, a behavioral ecologist at the University of Bristol.
So they will choose an elevated position, such as a tree or a termite mound, from which to sit, and then they watch out for predators that might be coming in to target the group. And then they'll give alarm calls to warn the rest of the group.
But throughout the watch, they also remind everyone else they're on lookout with softer surveillance calls. So any mongooses hunting for bugs can keep calm and carry on. What Kern and her colleagues observed in the wild was that mongooses who took those lookout shifts also enjoyed more grooming back at the burrow. Then, to establish cause and effect, they played recordings of certain mongoose individuals making surveillance calls, in effect tricking the mongoose's peers into thinking it was on guard duty. And indeed, the supposed sentry was rewarded with more grooming later on, suggesting that dwarf mongooses trade favors even after time has passed. The details are in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Not to say, though, that mongoose society is quite as complex as ours.
I think there are obviously ways in which we track contributions which are very different to what's going on here.
But at a very basic level, it appears mongoose society also follows the rule. You scratch my back, and I'll scratch yours. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The Constitution originally left it up to the state governments to decide who should have the right to vote. In the early years of our nation, the states limited the right to vote to white men who owned property. In 1789, white men who did not own property, members of certain religious groups, freedmen, Native Americans, slaves, and women were not allowed to vote. After the Revolution, an increasing number of people objected to these limits on voting rights. States began to do away with property and religious restrictions. In addition, new states joining the Union placed fewer limitations on suffrage. In the early 1800s, for example, 6 new Western states gave the right to vote to all adult white males. That's all for today's podcast. The show's theme song is Complacent by Cheryl B. Engelhardt. You can find Cheryl online at cbemusic.com. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, June 4th, 2018. I'm Mark Belanger. The annual conference of the UN's International Labour Organization is headed into its second week. More than 4,000 delegates, including hundreds of unionists, are attending the conference. The ILO is the United Nations agency specialized on matters of work in the world. It develops international laws called conventions on topics such as gender equality, child labor, and slavery. The conference was opened by ILO Director General Guy Ryder. Mr. Ryder is the first unionist to lead the organization in its 99-year history. Patrick Motza reports.
ILO Director General Guy Ryder called on delegates to the International Labour Conference to pave the way for ending all forms of violence and harassment at the workplace. Delegates are due to negotiate the adoption of a possible convention or recommendation on this pressing issue. Opening the annual event, often known as the World Parliament of Labour, Ryder referred to the Me Too campaign and high-profile cases of sexual harassment that have made international headlines.
And so we're confronted today with evidence of a submerged iceberg of misconduct, which disfigures and contaminates the world of work and renders it all too frequently a particularly hostile an intimidating environment to women.
Ryder admitted that the negotiations are long overdue and stressed the importance of producing results which really make a difference.
Simply put, our answer to the ever more vocal call for this action has to be us too.
Ryder also addressed several other topics that are on the agenda of the conference, including gender equality.
The fact remains that we remain far from the goals that we have set ourselves, and that progress towards those goals remains slow, uneven, and uncertain.
Ryder urged delegates to join in what he called a new push for gender equality on the occasion of the ILO's centenary, which will be marked next year. Patrick Moser at the ILO.
One of the delegates attending the ILO conference in Geneva is the president of the Zambia Congress of Trade Unions. Nenkoli Nishimba applauded this year's focus on gender equality and called for more social dialogue between governments, employers, and labor unions.
This 107th session of the International Labour Conference has covered a wide range of subjects relating to the dynamics of the world of work. In particular, the report of the Director General provides leadership and decisive positioning of ILO from the past hesitations to place the issue of gender equality on the agenda and putting on the spotlight challenges of harassment and discrimination in the world of work. The employment situation globally remains precarious despite relative global economic growth. The picture is worse in African countries where employment is largely in the informal economy, with only about 10% of the working population in formal employment. This implies that social protection coverage has also remained narrow in most African countries, with about 90% of the working population not covered by social protection programs. We appreciate that social dialogue should be the means to achieving social protection. The Committee on Social Dialogue helped to put into perspective social dialogue in our different national setups. Without doubt, enhancing social dialogue in our different nations will help to consolidate our ideological approach to the concept of development and eventually ensure policy coherence at national level as we align our development policies to the Agenda 2030. Such social dialogue must be structured on the principle of tripartism, taking into account that employers' organizations, workers' organizations, and government represent distinct constituencies and that, by nature of their existence, are directly involved at different levels in the world of work.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Radio Labor's newscasts are available on its website at www.radiolabor.net. Follow us on Twitter @RadioLabor. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. It's been a rocky week in European politics. Let's start in Italy, which has a brand new populist government led by Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. That's a major relief after top Italian political parties, the Five Star Movement and the League, were blocked from forming a government earlier this week because of an objection by the country's largely symbolic president about their pick for economy minister. That sparked fears that another high-profile instance of unelected bureaucrats overruling the will of the people would bolster anti-EU sentiment in Italy, where there's already support for a Brexit-style referendum to possibly leave the EU. But a deal was worked out and a new economic minister tapped. So what's next for Italy? Likely some big reforms, including hardline immigration proposals that could see 500,000 migrants from Africa and the Middle East deported from the country. There's also talk of a nationwide universal basic income and a 100-point pension reform system in which the sum of the number of years someone's paid into the system plus their age must hit 100 before making pension withdrawals. Hold your horses, because things in Italy are about to get interesting. Over in Spain, Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has been booted from office after losing a no-confidence vote on Friday. Rajoy's ruling party is beset with scandal involving high-level bribery, money laundering, and a massive slush fund benefiting party elites. Rajoy is set to be replaced by socialist leader Pedro Sanchez, who's pledged to tackle Spain's rising economic inequality. And the EU is hitting back at steel and aluminum tariffs slapped on the trading bloc by President Trump this week. The EU's top trade official has promised retaliatory tariffs aimed at hitting legacy American companies, especially those in swing states like Kentucky bourbon, corn from Midwestern red states, chewing tobacco from the Carolinas, and Florida orange juice. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays is our daily special. And at the chef's table, we always like to begin with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 54 degrees. We're slated to be a bit cooler than we were yesterday because we were about 90 yesterday, at least here at the mothership at Positively 3rd and Marie. We should be going up to Weather Underground says 76, more like 78 to 80. And we should be in that temperature range for at least a few more days. Dry conditions will continue for today. Winds are currently out of the southwest at 2 miles per hour, but will be increasing out of the northwest in about 2 hours at 5 to 10 miles per hour, which is its usual. And will be shifting tonight out of the west to west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow will be around 82, 84, and with a slight chance of precipitation. Negligible, I might add. But as we get further on in the week, that percentage of precipitation increases. The possibility does increase until Friday, where we will indeed have rain, which is good because we like rain here in this transition zone between the chaparral and the rainforest. Yep. Okay, so let's see what else. Grass pollen remains very high. The air quality index is actually good at 10 parts per million, which means there's a bunch of people who have decided, oh, the air is so nice. Doesn't it smell nice? And everybody agrees, and they go, okay, let's go burn our trash. And they do. Ugh. This is Oregon. You would think. You would think. Daytime UV index is very high at 9. Do take care if you have numbers like that in your region. High pressure dominates the region at 29.98 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is 77%. Okay. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. Positively, they do. London is 66 and cloudy. Paris is 79 and mostly cloudy. This being the time of year, though August usually is the time for the thunderstorm activity where it blows out infrastructure. But here it is June, and they are having thunderstorm warnings with possibility of electrical grid being impacted. Rome is 80 degrees and fair. Kiev is 84 and fair. Kabul is 85 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 78 degrees with light rain. Tokyo is 70 degrees and fair. Sydney, Australia is 56 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and sunny with a small craft advisory for, yes, gale force winds on the bay. Woo! And New York is 58 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. First offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Kylie Crow out of Think Progress. Well, it's no secret the nation's top environmental official, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, has long held an affinity for the fossil fuel industry. A new report details just how close he has become to one particular billionaire coal baron. Pruitt saw coal executive Joe Kraft at least 7 times in his first 14 months as administrator, plus 2 additional schedule appearances, more meetings than Pruitt has had with any environmental group. And that was the New York Times had detailed that in an extensive report just yesterday. Well, actually, it was Saturday, but, okay. Pruitt and his son even enjoyed one of the biggest University of Kentucky basketball games of the season from Kraft's plum seats last December. The EPA says Pruitt paid cash for the tickets, but he was accompanied by his own security detail, as well as Kentucky State Police, because his Praetorian Guard's just not enough. You got to get the local cops in there too, or the local state cops. Come on. Everybody's on the gravy train now. Pruitt's personal security cost taxpayers $3.5 million in his first year alone. Far more than his predecessors, some who just decided to fly coach. Who are you? Oh, I'm so-and-so from the Environmental Protection Agency. Oh, really? What's that? Yeah, America. Kraft, the head of Alliance Resource Partners, crusaded against the Obama administration's efforts to curb pollution and environmental destruction caused by the coal industry because money is more important than lives. And I always answer, well, if there's no one there around alive to buy your stuff, what's going to happen then? We'll just groove on the rubble, I guess is what they'll say. Everybody is at heart a Jerry Rubin. Who knew? Kraft and his wife, Kelly Kraft. You can't, if you wrote this for Hollywood, they would laugh you out of the town. Kelly Kraft donated more than $2 million to Trump's campaign and inauguration. Well, at least there's $2 million that we can account for. The, almost $200 million and counting that we cannot account for? Trump appointed Kelly Kraft ambassador to Canada last October so she can go tell them, take your poutine, and I don't know, stuff it. All right. She told the CBC at the time that she appreciates and respects both sides of the climate change debate and defended Trump's decision to exit the Paris Climate Agreement because that's what he does. He's a dictator. Pruitt and Kraft first met in the mid-2000s, but the relationship has really paid dividends for the coal baron in the past year. Pruitt announced the repeal of Obama's signature climate plan in Kraft's hometown, with Kraft in the audience. We took the black guy's stuff and we stuffed it. Oh, wow, we're going to make money now. Yeah, we are. A month earlier, Mr. Pruitt postponed enforcement of a rule barring coal power plants from dumping toxic metals into rivers, a move requested by a coal industry group with Kraft on its board. And that was the Times reported that because they always refer to these authoritarian personages like Pruitt as Mr. Pruitt. Did they ever refer to him as Mr. Charlie Manson? I think not. The EPA administrator and coal baron even exchanged text messages. Hi, Mr. Kraft. Hi, Scotty. How are you? I'm fine. I'm in my cone of silence right now. I'm just about ready to speak to God, but I thought I'd call you up to see how you're doing. Well, Scotty, I'm having a good time. Kelly and I are going to have brunch. Really? What you having? Avocado toast. It's the new thing, you know. Kraft and other coal executives have asked the Trump administration to roll back at least 8 Obama-era rules regulating coal industry pollution because, who needs clean air when there's money to burn? All right. Well, on Friday, Trump, ordered the Department of Energy to look into ways to keep coal and nuclear plants from retiring. Because, if they were to happen to just like with a nuke plant, for instance, melt down and despoil the environment for hundreds of miles around, well, gee, that's like Chernobyl, except better. Because it's destroying America, isn't it? Do we really want that? Okay, a memo obtained by Bloomberg News details an administration proposal to exercise emergency authority to force grid operators to buy electricity from coal and nuclear plants at risk of retirement. That's sticking it to Grandma Millie now, isn't it? Well, the unprecedented intervention has been advocated by pro-coal politicians like Joe Manchin, told you, and coal baron Robert Murray. Killer Robert Murray, I might add.
Danser maintenant sous l'été, les pieds nus dans le sable. Danser maintenant et jeter vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent.
All right, finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article out of Reuters and apparently written by anonymous worker bees there. So I guess that's the way they like it. Well, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has told a UN human rights expert who said the country's judicial independence was under threat to go to hell, warning against interference in domestic affairs. How dare you tell us who we kill and who we don't kill? The Philippine Supreme Court voted last month to remove Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Serrano, whom Duterte had called an enemy, for voting against controversial government proposals, citing violations in the way she was appointed. Her dismissal is sending a chilling message to other Supreme Court judges and members of the judiciary. Diego Garcia Sayon, special UN rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers, said. And then Duterte told a news conference late Saturday night, "Tell him not to interfere with the affairs of my country. He can go to hell." And then he took off for South Korea, because that's what he does. In particular, he's always defied international pressure, and his diatribes against critics are well known. In particular, he has railed against former U.S. President Barack Obama and UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial killings, Agnes Callamard, for criticizing the bloody war on drugs, his signature public safety project. That's one way of putting it. Serrano, the first Chief Justice to be removed by her peers, had voted against several of Duterte's proposals, including the extension of martial rule in the volatile southern Philippines. Yeah, well, there's no room for the rule of law when a strongman petty dictator is running the show. Now is there? Kind of resonates, if you get my drift. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But Netroots Radio broadcasts on for breaking news as it breaks, and I see all sorts of news. A volcano or some sort of eruption in Guatemala. Supreme Court's ruled in favor of that Colorado baker. So, yeah, Supreme Court said you have a right to discriminate, so do. Well, I'm sure we'll pick up on that a bit tomorrow. In Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays here on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day. And we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.